You all for coming to this great parent education night with our wonderful speaker, Cynthia Klein. This event is made possible by this BRSSD PTA Council. Please help me welcome Cynthia Klein.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, our parenting approach is really developed and based on how we were raised as children. Wouldn't you say? It's like we learned in our family how to get our needs met, right? So maybe we learned to be nice to get our needs met. Maybe we learned to be loud to get our needs met. Each one of us had our own personality, our own ways of trying to figure out. We had caregivers, we had parents, and we had to try to work within the system, right, where we were raised. Fast forward 25 years, 30 years, and now you have your own family. Does your family look like the family you grew up in? How many of you have the exact same family configuration? Everybody's the same, acts the same. Some. Now, some are probably very similar, right? You're looking and you're saying, oh my gosh, my son is acting just like my father did. So what's happened is we have to now adapt as a parent, because when we were a child, we had an image of what a parent was like, right? By how our parent was. So now you come in with your own family, and the tendency is to do what? Who do you usually act like? Your parents. Because that's what you know, right? Now, I know from when I was raised, it is a very different culture now than when I was raised. I have a daughter who is 30. And when I was raised, back in the 50s and 60s, it was very different. But if I continue to say, well, when I was young, I wouldn't have, right? Or when I was young, this is what happened. It doesn't work. We need to learn how to adapt to the way the times are now, which is why I think parents keep looking for what's going to work. And I think you're probably here tonight because you're thinking, some of the things I'm doing isn't working. How many of you feel like some of the things just aren't working? Right, it's okay. So what is it that I can do differently? And as Nivedita mentioned to you, I've been working with families for a long time. It was really a mission and my goal. And I wanted to have a great relationship with a teenage daughter. That was really important to me. And so I ended up having a daughter who was very challenging. I mean, how could I have an easy daughter and stand up here, right? I mean, who would want to listen to me? It was like, oh yeah, my daughter did everything I told her to do. You know, get out of here, right? Oh yeah, she never partied, she never drank, she never did other things, but she did. And so I am so dedicated helping parents learn how to be like an ally. That's why my book is called Ally Parenting, because I realize there's kind of two main ways we look at our children. We look as an adversary, like they're out to get me, right? They're manipulating, they're against us, or we can do like an ally, which is more working together with our children. So that's what I want to present to you tonight. Now, the books are for sale, and the reason I put them around is because sometimes it's like you might want to look at them and see, is this something that's going to be valuable for you? So there's an envelope in there that tells you how you could purchase it tonight if you want to. Because how can, you want to see, is this or not? I value it. I ended up writing it because I was working with parents privately for years, and they'd say, what book do you recommend? I have 150 parenting books on my shelf, and I still felt like I needed to present what I thought was a successful way of parenting to everyone. Okay, so we're going to be focusing on 3 different areas tonight, and we have until 8:30, which is so wonderful that we have 2 full hours together tonight. Okay. So we're going to be talking about what the difference is between an ally and an adversary parenting style. Then we're going to be talking about how to listen to your upset child. Isn't that difficult? Anybody have a hard time like, oh my gosh, what do I do? I love talking about that because it's so important, and I had lots of experience with that. And then we're going to be talking about how to be a director, to use director role strategies, which I'll explain more what that is. We're going to be learning the after then and how to set personal boundaries. So kind of a whole area of different things we're going to be talking about tonight. Okay. So let's talk about the difference between parenting as an ally and an adversary. And one of the reasons I named the book Ally Parenting is I work with a lot of men. So those of you men in here, I work with a lot of men. And when I would say to them, what does it feel like with an adversary? I bet you know what that feels like. Like they kind of got it, you know, the negative feeling inside. And so in contrast to that is as an ally, like you're really feeling there's some sort of a connection. Okay. So this is the overall umbrella philosophy of being an ally. The first is that, number one, you change yourself first. You change yourself. You know what's so exciting about that? That makes it that you have control. You have control over yourself much more than you do over your child, right? I know some of you are trying to control your children, and it probably isn't going too well because they don't like it, right? So then the second thing is you need to understand what I call the parent-child equation. And what that is on one side of the equation is what the parent thinks, says, and does. On the other side of the equation is what the child thinks, says, and does. And there is a relationship, right, between what you do and what your child does. The key is for you to work on changing your side of an equation. So when you have a math equation, you change one side of the equation, what happens to the other side? What? It changes. Have you ever seen a math problem where you change one side and the other side stays the same? So I really want you to, if you leave with nothing else but tonight, but thinking, okay, if I work on changing myself, what I say, what I do, how I feel, then I will get a different response from my child. I have never heard of a parent changing changing for the positive or negative, right? But if you think, if I make differences in myself, then I will see a different response in my child. And what I always hear is parents, so I'll suggest something, or you might read something to do differently, and they say, well, what if I do that and my child still acts the same? Doesn't happen. So have confidence, and hope you try it out as well. Okay, here we go. Change ourselves first. This is so exciting. Woohoo! Change, right? But this, again, this is where the power is. The power is in changing yourself, not in changing your children. And not in changing your partner as well. So everything I'm going to tell you tonight relates to your partner. I have my husband here of 31 years, so you can ask him too how I've gotten much better as I changed because I wanted to create a great relationship with a teenage daughter, and the way I grew up, and I wasn't close to my mother, and I didn't know any skills how to do it, I had to learn. So everything I'm sharing with you, I had to learn as well. And I'm pretty bossy and pushy. I was a school teacher, and when I first started out as a substitute teacher, they loved me because I could just stare at the kid. You know, they would just shiver in their seats. So that wasn't going to work with my daughter. So everything I'm sharing with you, I had to do as well. So we're going to start out a fable, Aesop's fable, The Wind and the Sun. And maybe some of you have probably heard this fable. The wind boasted about its strength. The sun said, strength and gentleness. Let's have a contest. So they looked down And there was a man walking on the road with a very warm coat because it was very cold out. So the sun went behind the cloud, and the wind was like, this is a piece of cake. I can just blow that coat off of this man. So the wind started blowing and blowing, blew so hard like the birds were clinging to the branches and the leaves and dirt were flying all over. But the man clung onto his coat even more, so the wind started blowing even harder. But the man clung onto the coat even harder. So now it's the sun's turn. Sun comes out from behind the cloud, starts warming the air, starts warming the ground. And the man starts sweating, rubs his forehead. Whew, this is hot. And glowing louder and louder and brighter and brighter. And the man gets so hot. What do you think he does? He takes off his coat, he unbuttons it, he takes it off, and he sits. And the wind said, "How did you do that?" And the sun said, "I lit the day. With gentleness, I got my way." So think, when you are interacting with your kids, are you trying to be like the wind, pushing even harder when they're clinging on to saying, "No, I'm not going to do that"? Are you threatening? Are you taking things away? That's all hard power. Or are you using a form of connection and discipline that's soft power? So that's what I'm with tonight. How can I be soft power like the sun? How many of you have heard that fable before? Okay. Share it with your children. Okay. Okay. Control what's going to happen. I hear laughter, so that means that some of you are relating to this. The fear. Fear comes up. And some of you I know have teenagers, and I'm going to guess those with teenagers have had many times of fear. I know I certainly did. The problem is, if we let the fear control us, then we don't make very good decisions at all. So remember, the key point is to change who first? Change ourselves first. So in order to change ourselves, we have to understand ourselves, right? You can't just say, "Oh, I'm going to change. Oh, I promise I'm going to change," without knowing what it is that you need to change. So I'm going to have you work on what your fears are. So I hope everyone has a handout. This is a workshop style. You're going to be writing, you're going to be self-reflecting, you're going to also be sharing with somebody next to you as much as you feel comfortable. So on your handout, you'll find activity 1. Is anybody raise your hand if you need a handout? Okay, we've got a couple of people up here that need a handout. So you notice on the bottom of the first page, it says to activity 1. Write down a specific time you became fearful about your child's choices. What did you say or do during this time? Now, this would be what you said or did that you were not happy about. Not what you were happy about. That's nice, and I'm glad you had wonderful times. But think about it. What did they do? Did they run across the street? Did they go somewhere and not tell you where they were going? So please, I want to give you a minute right now to write it down, and then I would encourage you to, the person next to you, just share briefly what that fear is, so it's helpful to sit next to somebody. Oh, you will know when it's time to end when you hear this. So, when the train comes, please. Okay, go ahead, and I'll walk in case you have any questions. Take a deep breath. We've been talking about fears. Scary being a parent, isn't it? It's really scary. You don't know how they're going to turn out, right? We can only do the best that we can. And that's, I would say, all of you wonderful parents. I'm going to tell all of you, you're all wonderful because you're here. To me, wonderful parent is somebody who's seeking to grow and change. So look at all, you look around. This is so impressive that this school district has all of you seeking how to become the best that you can. Now, when you go home, and there's some things later on you might be sharing with your kids, which is fine. This is not a secret, right? You're not here to find out how to secretly control your children, right? That's not what this is about. This is about how do you build better relationships. So when you go home and when you talk to your kids about some other things or whatever it is you want to from tonight, please do not say, I'm learning how to be a better parent. That's not what it's about. Be specific. I'm learning how to communicate better. I'm learning how to communicate better, right? I don't want any judgment. Good, bad, better, best. We don't need judgment, do we? We get enough judgment out there. Oh, that person's a very good parent. Look what they let their kid do, right? So please just tell your children, hey, I went to this great workshop and I'm learning how to communicate better with you. So you can talk about communication being better as a person. Okay. So this is the key. Create change with connection, not control. So when you're trying to create change and it isn't working, the wall goes up. We're going to talk about walls. I'm going to gather you're trying to use control. Where should the control be? Over who? Say it loud, everybody. Ourselves. That's where the control is. Remember, parent-child, the equation, you change yourself, then your child will respond differently. Okay. My daughter, well, I had a very bright, pretty daughter. Actually, she's getting married this year, so this is kind of exciting. She's 30 and found a partner. Actually found her wedding dress in an hour and a half. How exciting was that on Saturday? It was very exciting. Okay. Because she never believed in homework. My daughter, as a kindergartner, would come home and say, why do we have to bring home homework? Why don't we just stay at school and finish it there? I think she had a good point, right? Just like at work. Do you like to bring home work from work? So anyways, needless to say, she kind of never believed in homework. So that was always a challenge. And so there was one time she was in there, kind of in her room, kind of like not doing it, and I had this fear started coming up, right? She doesn't do her homework. She's not going to graduate, and she's a smart kid. She's not going to graduate, and if she doesn't graduate, oh my God, what happens? She never gets a job. She never moves out. She ends up sleeping here forever, right? That's the fear, right? If it can really expand. And so I'm standing outside, and I felt like this coming up, and I was going to go in and use control. And I stopped myself. And this is what I thought. Okay, what I'm about to do, is it going to build or break the relationship with my daughter? What is the impact going to be of my actions? It was very profound when I stopped myself, because then after that, I continually said that to myself before I did anything, before I said anything. What is the result going to be of what I'm about to do? Because what happens, parents are so righteous, and I'm right and you're wrong, and this is the way you need to do it, and we push kids around, and nowadays they don't kind of go for that. Have you noticed that? They're not into, you're the parent, I will do whatever you want. That's not it. They're very independent thinkers. So we need to work with them in a different way. You do have rules, you do have guidelines, you do have expectations. However, not through hard power. That's just not the way it works around here, especially not in the Bay Area. Okay, maybe some other places, some other cultures. Okay, so I want to encourage you maybe to write this down and to keep before you're interacting, to stop. Okay, because you'll know you have had the same things happen over and over again, am I right? Like same thing, over and over again. So it's not a mystery what's going to happen when you go in and yell at your kid. Like you know, right? Or when you tell them to do something, you know what's going to happen. So stop and think, is this effective, what I'm doing? Be careful of that urgency you're going to get inside, right? If I don't do something, anybody get that feeling, right? If I've got to do something right now. No, you don't. Most of the time. Okay. So let me talk about the adversarial parenting belief. And some of you might have been raised like this. It is the parent, there's a win-lose relationship. So who would be the person, if the parent's thinking, somebody's going to win, somebody's going to lose, who's going to win? The parent. So that's what's in their mind when you're an adversarial approach. Doesn't matter what you think, what you say, your emotions aren't that important. The bottom line is, I'm the parent and what I say goes. You are the parent. And there are many times when you do have the final say, when you are a director. We'll talk about it. But that overall feeling, I'm in charge, is an adversarial approach. They don't care about the feelings, and what matters is right now. Right now, you better do your homework. It doesn't matter what it's doing to the relationship. That's the viewpoint of an adversarial parenting. And I'm going to show you some of the strategies that adversarial parents use. And I'm going to guess that some of you are using some of these. Do these look familiar? Maybe some yelling, maybe some shaming, maybe taking things away. What happens with taking things away? You take something away. Any of you have children that say, I don't care? Who has that? Right. Then you're going, oh my God, I got to get a bigger gun. Right? This is, man, you try that with certain strong-willed kids. My daughter's very strong-willed, just like her mother and father. And you're just like, I don't care. And then you're stuck. Is that an effective parenting model? And you're doing it because that's what you know, right? You're feeling probably stuck. Oh my gosh, what else am I going to do? And it isn't working. Please, leave. I've got to find a different way. Threats don't work, taking things away. One mom I'm working with, 9-year-old girl, 9 and 10-year-old girls. Any of you have 9 or 10-year-old girls? Okay. There seems to be, I seem to work with a lot of parents of girls that age, because they're at this point of like really branching out into who they are and asserting who they are. And so this mom had been raised with this style of taking things away, and you better listen to what I say, right? Kind of a harshness. So she tried taking her daughter's phone away. You won't guess what her daughter did. She ran and took her mother's phone away. You taking my phone away? I'm taking your phone away. So, now you can up the ante, right? Is it going to ever get good? It never, never, never gets good. It only damages a relationship. So when you continually use adversarial strategies, what happens, kids feel hurt. They constantly feel hurt. You don't think you're hurting, but they constantly feel hurt. So it gets this underlying feeling of pain and suffering in children. So when you want them to cooperate, do you think they're going to cooperate? They will not, because they're so angry at you from something else that they will not cooperate. So I want to encourage you to work away from these. That's why I'm going to teach you some better strategies that I consider better. Okay. Now, as an ally parent, This is more of a win-win strategy. Now, winning doesn't mean that everybody gets their way, right? Winning is this sense that when you use an ally, when it's a win-win, your children don't say to you, you never listen to me, you don't care what I think, you're always telling me what to do. If you hear those, then it's more of an adversarial approach that you're having. They feel things are unfair. That's unfair. You don't care. Those kind of things are telling you, my child doesn't feel things are fair. This is something to look at. Please try not to respond when they say, that's not fair. Well, that's just how it is. That's sarcasm, by the way. It's not helpful. Okay. So with an ally perspective, you do try to have a sense of at different times people feel like they're winning. You have a sense of a long-range view, a relationship. So think about the strategies you're using now. Could I use those same strategies in 5 years? Because you want to use strategies you can use for a lifetime with your children. And then they get older and then you don't parent them. You parent them in a different way. So some more ally approach is to have problem solving, to do the after-then approach, which is the work before play, which I'm going to be teaching you tonight. My favorite, the only way I got my daughter as a teenager to do chores, through the after-then. And I hope all your children are doing chores. Just want to put it out there. They need to be learning how to do chores, because that's part of what you do when you're in a household, you contribute. Empathetic listening, I'm going to teach you how to do that. Doing reasoning. It's time to is a great strategy as well. And as an ally, you reduce the number of rules as they age. Does that make sense? You have a lot more, you want to control your 5-year-old a lot more than your 15-year-old. And they'll let you know, right, if you're trying to control as much. So kind of in summary, want to think about if you're building or breaking the emotional connection. Because without emotional connection, you have no influence. And you don't have control. I want you to leave here tonight saying, okay, no wonder I'm having a hard time trying to control my child, because I really don't have control. I only have influence. So we're going to be talking about how you build and break the connection. So a piece of that, building or breaking the connection, is looking at how much are you nurturing and how much are you structuring. So if you tallied your conversations that you have with your kids, think about it for a minute. Let's take the morning routine. Anybody have a hard time in the morning, getting out in the morning? That's it? Just about 20 people? Oh, okay, all right. So take a moment and think of all the things you say to your children in the morning. How many times are you trying to control them, telling them what to do, versus connecting and listening to them? What would be the percentage between you trying to structure and control them versus you trying to listen and connect with them? Yes. No time to listen. And that's tricky because then we get into this control mode, right? So what I would like to propose, I don't have time to teach you that skill tonight, but this is where you would do collaborative problem solving ahead of time. Proactively setting up structure will really help it. So you could actually build in 5 minutes of listening in the morning. But it feels that way, doesn't it? It feels like we don't have any time. Okay. So think about balancing it. How much am I telling what to do? How much am I setting structures, guidelines, versus how much am I listening and connecting? Try to make it more equal, please, because that's how you build connection. Think of your own self. When somebody listens to you, and they listen well, and they're not judging and criticizing you, how do you feel about them? Do you feel good about somebody who listens to you? Yes, we do. So would you like your children to feel good about you? Yes. So think about that, please. Okay. Now, another piece of the ally parenting is to understand what your parenting role is. Now, this is different from probably anything you've ever heard anywhere else. It's not like helicopter parenting or authoritarian. These are different roles that you use at different times depending on who has ownership of the situation that's come up. Who is the one who is supposed to decide the final outcome? Very different way. When I work with parents, I find out majority of the time the parents are acting like a director. A director, right? All right, do this, do that. They tell what to do, right? They're acting like a director as though it's only their problem to solve, rather than as a collaborator, which is a joint problem to solve. So getting out of the house in the morning is not your job to solve. It is a joint problem because everybody needs to get out of the house. So it's something that you solve together. So please proactively come up with a plan so that you are not trying to be the director. The last one, the supporter role, is when your children are the ones who should solve the problem. So director is when you are the one to solve the problem, and I'll go into how you decide. The collaborator is when you solve the problem together, and please try to do as much collaboration as you can because your kids will love it. They'll feel heard. They'll feel important. It will develop their self-esteem. It'll develop their sense of resiliency. And the third is to be a supporter when it's your child's role or job to solve the problem, and you are there simply as a support. You could use this with a partner that you live with or your friends, the same way of looking at things. Because I'm going to guess there's some of you who bring up something to a friend and they start telling you what to do. Anybody experience that and not like it? Right? So that person is acting like a director, like it's their problem to solve, when it's not that. It's actually, they should be a supporter. They should be supporting you as you solve the problem. So can you see if once you start to realize if you have the correct role, how it could change relationships in a much, much better way? Okay, so there are questions that you ask yourself to help decide what your role is. These get a little bit tricky, and it's going to be different for each child depending on their age. First of all, you ask yourself, who is wanting this problem to be solved? Who does it directly affect? So let me ask, doing chores around the house, who wants that to be done? Parents? Do the kids, any of you have kids who say, oh, I love to clean? Maybe when they were little. So the parents are the ones saying, this is a mess. I can't cook in the kitchen's a mess. Stuff's all over the floor. So you are the one saying, I want this done. Okay? Question is, does it involve values, rules, safety? Does doing chores and cleaning involve values or rules? Yes. Okay? So since it does, and you're the one who wants it, this is where you use director role strategies. Now, two parts to that. You want to also do collaborator role strategy first, and then you follow through with director. So it isn't cut and dry. So rather than just telling your child what to do, you come together, you collaborate, you problem solve together. I have several chapters of it in my book, How to Collaborate. You problem solve together, you bring it up, you say, this is a problem, I can't, this is not all mine to clean. They'll go, grumble, 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 which is fine. It's okay, you can handle it. Then you come up with collaborative problem solving, and then you usually have to do a director strategy to make sure they follow through. Okay. How about they have a problem with a friend? Okay, so let's say your child comes home upset and they say, I really don't like Billy. I'm not gonna play with him anymore. So that tells you what? That there's a friendship problem, right? Now, whom does that directly impact, the friendship problem? The child. I'm gonna guess some of you act as though it's your problem. I hear it back there. And when it's your problem, then you use the director role, and as the director, you would tell them what to do. Have you talked to your friend? What happened? Why did you do that? So you would start interrogating as though it's your problem to solve, and what is the typical response? Do they like that? How many of you have kids that love you telling them, love when you tell them what to do with their friendship problems? Anybody? Do they get mad at you? Any of you have kids who get mad? Don't tell me what to do. Okay. That's because you have chosen the incorrect role. Actually, if there's not bullying or major problems going on, it's probably you need to be the supporter role. It's not for you to be doing it with them. It's for you to support them. Okay. So here's some examples, because one of the things I want you to do before we take a little, and we step aside for a second, is I want you to look at the problem you wrote down, the fear that you wrote down today, to evaluate what role or roles are best for you to use to handle this problem. So here's some examples. Video games. Oh, every single family has problems with video games, right? Okay. Does your child like limits on video games? I didn't hear a yes. Okay. So you are the one who wants to put limits on video games, and you have to. So what role do you play? Director, collaborator, or supporter? Director. Now, let me explain why. Because they don't want a rule set. They have no interest in having a rule set. Now let me straighten this up so I don't totally confuse you. Cynthia said that you collaborate with the chores, but you don't with the video games. Kids usually, in some way, know that chores have to be done. They see some value in it, right? Because if they have stuff all over, and let's say they leave their clothes all over, and then they have to find their uniform, and they can't, right? It causes a problem. So chores do in some way impact them, right? Or let's say the trash is never taken out, and it piles up and it smells awful. So they do in some way get impacted when chores are not done. So they do feel it. But video games, they do not. I know parents try to do collaborative problem solving video games, so then they think their child will go along with it when you set the limit. Is that right? Let's come along, let's discuss it. So you may certainly try to discuss it with your child, but the bottom line is you set how much time and when it's going to go off, and you clearly use director roles. Okay. Do I have a question? Question. Do we have a microphone? You have a microphone.
What happens when you set limits for them and they don't follow?
Okay. So the thing with setting limits is there's all of these other pieces to it. So that's a very important question, but there's so many pieces to it, like how did you set the limit? That would be the first question I would ask. Not like, after the horse is out of the barn, what do you do? But how it's set up beforehand. So I'm going to be presenting how to use set your personal boundaries and an after then. So an after then would be very appropriate for video gaming. Okay. So hopefully that will be a strategy. Okay. So see what I'm saying? Rather than saying what do you do if they don't follow the limit, you go back and you say, how did I set the limit? Apparently I didn't set it very effectively. So I need to redo how I said it. Okay, hopefully that helps you. Okay. All right. Collaborator, we have, the chores, and then we have, when it's their friendship issue, then you want to be a supporter. So take a moment now. Look at your problem that you got fearful about and think, should I be a director? Should I be a collaborator, then a director? Should I be a supporter? And talk to the person next to you so that if you probably need some support on this.
What is my role? Is the reason that I'm having problems because I'm using the wrong role? So probably it is. But I hope this has been helpful, right? I find it really helpful when I work with parents, a way to first look at, okay, what is your role? Are you supposed to direct? And if you are supposed to direct, are you doing effective? Am I on? Pardon? If you
Are supposed to be a collaborator, then learn how to collaborate. Most people don't know how to collaborate because we didn't grow up learning how to collaborate, right? My husband and my daughter and I had family meetings for about 8-9 years, and I have all the notes. It's really great looking at it. We did family meetings. We did collaboration. And I know that even though she complained, but we always gave allowance at the end of the meeting. So that was, the allowance was not tied into doing chores whatsoever, but because she used money to buy things and we worked all that out also. So think about that. As much as you can collaborate, as long as you're not supposed to be a director, okay? Don't collaborate when you're not going to be listening to them and going along with what they have to say. That makes them mad. Okay. Oh, so what I wanted to offer you is that there are ways to continue getting support. Actually, and one of them is through signing up for my newsletter, and Michelle is going to be handing out some clipboards. I do the old-fashioned clipboard, writing down your name, your email. There's lots of space, and I have a nice black pen attached. And the reason I ask for your phone number, because sometimes I can't read people's handwriting. I promise you I will not call you at dinner time. I will not sell your phone number to anyone whatsoever. And then there's also an opportunity. What I offer is 45-minute free, I do it through Zoom, a Bridges to Clarity session. So if you want to talk to me and say, share your situation, wanting to get my input of what might be going on. I can't give you the solutions in 45 minutes, but I can give you more insight as to what's going on. I offer that, and there's a place on the board to put a check for that. Okay. And the book is for sale. There's an envelope in there. You can purchase it through check, cash, or Venmo. Now, Now we're in section 2. We talked about ally and adversary. You're starting to realize the way I can be an ally is to understand the difference between ally and adversary. I'm going to start to decide what role is rather than taking over when I shouldn't be. Now, how to listen to upset child. I got training on this about 20 years ago. And when I started to learn how to listen to emotions, it really changed my life. I could get pretty upset. I don't anymore because I really worked on it, what I was thinking that caused me to be upset. So I learned about emotions, and I found this is the key. We have to know how to listen to emotions. Because if we use the wrong approach, what happens? Kids shut down. They either usually get louder right in your face, or they shut down with the wrong approach. Some children will even shut down. You pick them up in the car and you say, how was your day? Any of you have kids who won't answer that, or they give you one? Yes. Even a simple question can feel. So children need to feel valued, and they need to feel heard. And I bet if you added up how much you talk to them versus listening, that there might be more talking than listening. Because listening to emotions, having them vent, is crucial before thinking can happen when you have an upset child. So now we're talking about when they're upset. They have something that's happened in their life that they're upset about. I'm not talking about when you set a limit on the video games and they don't. I'm not talking about that. That's director role. This is when you might be having a family meeting. They might be saying, I don't like my sister. I don't like my brother. Why did you have them? I don't like my teacher. I don't like his friend. I'm really upset. I didn't do well on the test. I don't like my times when they are upset is a prime opportunity for you to build connection to them, for you to have the nurture part of nurture and structure. Seize that moment. Oh my gosh, my child is actually sharing with me. Yahoo! I'm not going to jump in and direct them, tell them what to do, because they're going to shut them down. I'll tell you why. The emotional support system can be challenging. This is not easy because your own emotions get flared. The idea is if your child is upset about something, maybe they're coming at you, is how do you learn how to respond and just be calm and not react? That's hard, isn't it? So remember, who do we change first? Ourselves. So you see how this is important? So if we have to learn how to manage our own upsetness so that we can show our children that we can do that. So the process is the child's upset and you try to be calm. As you get calm, you offer them the support that they need. They vent, the emotions go out, then as long as the person is upset, they don't think well. Am I right on that? How many of you make great decisions when you're upset? How many of you make decisions when you're upset and then you regret it afterwards? Yes. Okay. The key is to learn how to allow space for your child to vent those emotions so then they can think better. That's what the emotional support process is all about. Them vent. So I'm going to share very simple about the brain, the emotions, the limbic system, and the prefrontal cortex. And what's wonderful is that this whole presentation is being videotaped, so it's also going to be available for you to all listen to again as well. Okay. So very simply, we have the emotional part of our brain, the limbic system part of our brain, and we have the thinking part of the brain. So the prefrontal cortex is the thinking part of the brain, whereas the limbic system is the emotional part of the brain. How many of you have been to talks where they've talked about when the prefrontal cortex gets developed? Probably those, especially with teenagers. They're kind of saying it takes a while, like 25. I think they've added on a few years for the guys. 45? Well, I don't know. 45, right. So 25 has been pretty standard for girls, and then they added on a few more years for guys. So when yeah, you got it. So when my daughter turned 25, and she knows all about this, because I've been doing this work since she was little, and I called her up and said, Jen, you're 25. Your prefrontal cortex is all. Her response, don't know about that, Mom. Still working on it. Okay. So the connection comes first. What this means is the limbic system is actually developed before you're born. So when a baby comes into the world, and you're holding, look, you look at the baby, right? So we naturally want to make emotional connection. Now, sometimes children have difficulty making emotional connections, right? And parents realize that, like there's something not quite connecting. The limbic system is the part of the brain that gut reactions come out, you assess whether you feel safe or not. Isn't it amazing? A little baby can get startled and get scared, right? And they can't figure it out logically what's going on. But that's the safety mechanism that we're born with. And then the prefrontal cortex starts developing later. I think it's like a year and a half, 2 years. It starts to develop. So the thinking and the planning and the judgment all takes a long, long time to develop. Now also, the limbic system is where the long-term memory is. So all the emotions that you have are all stored there. And this part takes a while. So if you have a 10-year-old, and it's a 10-year-old girl, and you're hearing, well, it takes till they're 25 for the prefrontal cortex to develop, how many more years do they have? A lot. Long time. Please be careful to not judge them like they should have it all together. They really don't, and they need your love and your concern and your caring that it's okay if they don't. So here's the thing, connection comes first. When children feel emotionally connected to you, then their thinking part of the brain functions better. Emotional connection is who we are. Might have been trained to not be emotional, you might have been trained, men particularly are trained to be less emotional, but they are not. They have the same emotions as women. But they're trained, right, guys, to not show it. But it's important that we need to be emotionally connected. How do you change them? Who asked the question? Okay. How do you change them? Okay. Well, as we know, you cannot control another person, right? So, if that person desires to change, then the change can. I know you're being a joke here. Okay. So, two parts of the brain, very simple, right? Limbic system, prefrontal cortex, they're interconnected. They are interconnected. They are not separate entities. But what happens if you've got the limbic system overflowing with all these emotions? What happens to the thinking part of the brain, do you think? Shuts down. Exactly. So any person who's emotional does not think well. Any person who is emotional does not think well. So when you ask questions, asking for them to access their thinking part of the brain, are they able to? Why did you do that? Is that a thinking question? Yes. Do you get your kids saying, well, the reason I hit my brother is because I'm really jealous because you spend so much time with him? No. That's kind of would you write down in your notes right now, please? Do not ask, why did you do that? Come on, everyone, I want to see you writing that down. Cynthia says, do not ask, why did you do that when they are upset? Now, later on, when you're having a discussion, it might be appropriate to talk about it, but probably not just like that. Okay, so think of an upset child or your friend or your partner as being like a pressure cooker, okay? So if you got a pressure cooker, and if you don't let the steam out, what happens to the pressure cooker? It explodes. So if your child's upset, we're talking about children, if your child's upset, trying to vent, and you do certain things I'm going to tell you to do, they will explode. So what's need to happen is to learn to listen to their emotions. So what this means, listen to a child's emotions with a sense of safety, warmth, and confidence in who they are. Confidence, no matter what age they are, that they have a good brain for that age. Don't compare them to being older or to being... This is all brain science. I'm not making this up. When you listen in a certain way, so I'm going to help you listen, that the tensions release, then what happens? The light bulb, right? Thinking happens. So your learning how to listen is so powerful. When I learned how to listen and not block communication, it made a world of difference. I think about it all the time. How am I listening? Okay. The more you are a listener for them, the more they're going to feel connected. And you're going to kind of like be their anchor. You know, the more you can learn how to be compassionate, how to be unconditional love. Now, does unconditional love mean you give them everything they want? No. It doesn't mean you buy things. I hear from too many parents, I buy them all these things, they don't appreciate it. Do you think you should stop buying them things? Yes. Buying them things does not make them happy because they'll complain, want something more. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to be showing you about communication blocks. I learned about communication blocks from Michael Popkin. My book uses about 5 of his concepts. He says it's fun, standing on them. Most important thing in life, we're going to talk about communication blocks. I talk about this as much as I can. It's so important. Okay. So a communication block. So you are the listener in this situation I'm going to talk about, and your child is the speaker. Okay? So a communication block is any remark or attitude. Is that an attitude? Or this? Okay, those are attitudes, right? Any listener that injures the speaker's self-esteem to some extent is broken off. So somehow your reaction to your child causes them to shut down. Would you like to know why? How many of you want to know why that's happening? Any of you have your kids shutting down? Let me see. I'm raising, okay. All of you have had people, okay. Just want to make sure this isn't, maybe you all know all this already and you don't, maybe you don't need any of this. Okay, just checking. Now, on this list, one thing I don't have on there, which is yelling. But yelling is always a block. It always hurts the person you're yelling at. Okay, so we all agree on that? Yelling doesn't feel like love and connecting. Okay. All right, so we're not going to be able to go through all of these tonight. We're going to go through a few. Interrogate. So again, each one of these feels like a block if it hurts the person's self-esteem, it hurts them. They are different from different people. So child and you say, what did you do at school today? And they don't answer. That's because it felt like an interrogation, and it felt like you were going to be judging them and telling them what to do and drilling down and trying to fix their life. So it was a block. Okay? Placating. Oh, people think placating is wonderful. Trying to make somebody feel better. That'll be okay. Don't worry about that. You've got lots of other friends. It can be a block. I'll explain that why. You've got commanding. Oh, boy. Any commanders in here? People like to tell others what to do? Okay. And then you have giving advice, sarcasm. Sarcasm seems to run in the family. Now, Me Tooism. Me Tooism is when somebody's expressing something. So let's say I said, oh, you know what, I'm really had a hard time. I was going on the computer and I was trying to get into this website and I just couldn't. And my friend says, you know what, I had a hard time too. I was trying to get into this other site. Okay, I'm bringing up my issue. to talk about and vent. Are they listening to me? They're talking about their own thing. That's a Me Tooism. Now, again, every one of these can be blocks or not. So if it felt good to me, it wouldn't be a block. So if you're a child and you're sharing something that happened to you when you were their age and they liked it, is that a block? No. So please don't get confused. It isn't always a block. Okay. So this is what happens. When you're using a communication block, it shuts down the thinking. It shuts down their thinking. Okay? So let's look at some underlying hurt. The first of all, we talked about interrogating, right? I think that was the first one. The underlying message is you must have messed up. That's why it can feel hurtful. And you're going to be pairing up, or three of you, you're going to be practicing the blocks in a moment. Placating. When you try to take away somebody's feeling, the underlying message is you don't have a right to those feelings. I don't want you to have those feelings, and I can't handle you having those feelings. It's too big for me. And then the third one we were talking about is commanding. You don't have a right to make your own decisions. So that's why it can be considered a hurtful underlying message. Okay, so now on your handout, you have this find activity 3, and there is 4 different communication blocks. So with your partner, it's crucial to read the blocks aloud. One of you be the adult, read what the underlying message is, one the child, and we're going to do this quickly, and then write down which blocks you have a tendency to do, okay? Really role play. I want to see all the theater people at work here. Okay. We want to get through this because we got to tell you what to do. Somebody asked, are you going to tell us what to do? I do want you to leave here with what to do. I want to just what. We're going to do a little bit of a poll here. I'm going to read each block. Oh, you're groaning over here. Those of you who are brave, if you have a tendency to do it, raise your hand. Okay, don't be shy. Okay. Can you do more than one? Yes. Like most people, like all of them. Like when I work with kids and there's 10 blocks, and I have them go home and I have them share the blocks with the kids and they get feedback from the kids. You know, sometimes it's like you're doing all of them. But anyways, okay, how many interrogators? Because you can't change it till you identify it, right? Okay, how many placators? Trying to make them feel good, yes. How many commanders? Commanding? All right. And how about giving advice? Yes. You know better than they do. You have experience. So, okay, I'm going to respond to that. Your children are growing and learning, right? So if they feel like you have more experience than them and they always hear that, is that going to help them develop their own confidence to think and make mistakes? I know you know the answers. We really need to allow our children opportunities to make mistakes, to grow. And that means we have to manage our fear so we're not just controlling them. I think of parenting as an opportunity for personal growth. Parenting is an opportunity for personal growth. If you look at that, you go, oh my gosh, look at all these interactions, how I grow from it. Okay. Wasn't that exciting to read those blocks? Yahoo! So now you're like, okay, I'm going to encourage you to share them with your children and ask them which ones you do. Now, can you change 4 things at once? It's too hard. So say, which one really bothers you the most? Which one do you want me to work on changing the most? So let's say placating, and you're feeling like, but better. I know you placators think you're making the world a better place. Now, That can be okay. At certain times, it's okay. But if your child's venting and expressing themselves and you try to make them feel better, then they can feel like, oh, I shouldn't feel this way. I don't know how I'm feeling. Then they start doubting themselves. That's the problem with placating. They don't believe themselves anymore, what they're feeling. Okay. So there's a place there. What blocks do you do? You can see that underneath the 4 different examples. So please take 30 seconds, write down what blocks you do, and you're going to ask your kids. Oh, I didn't finish my story. Sorry. So you ask your child, you say, well, which one should I do? Have them tell you. And then you tell your child how your child can tell you that you're doing it. You don't want them placating again. Mom, stop it. Right? So you want to teach them how to give you feedback in whatever way feels good to you. One mom I'm working with, her son keeps, oh, there you're doing it, Mom, interrogating. So he's doing it nicely. But you teach your kids how to give you feedback. Okay. Everybody write down what they've done, what they think they've done? Okay. Can you imagine learning how not to block with your friends? How not to block with a spouse? Very powerful, very powerful. Okay. So now, what do we do instead? How do you listen openly without judgment? Wow, when a child's expressing their thoughts or feelings. Now, I want to repeat again. This is not when you've set a limit, it's time to turn in your cell phone, and they start complaining. This is not the time you listen. People get confused. Oh, Cynthia said to listen, so I'm supposed to listen to everything. No. When you've set a limit, and it's clear, you do not listen to their whining and complaining about it. Everyone agree? Okay, it doesn't feel good. This is when they're expressing. This is an opportunity for you to build connection. So can you imagine if you've got this foundation of connection, how when you're trying to direct, how it might make directing easier? Or when you're collaborating, because one of the first 2 steps of collaboration is to not block and to listen openly. So these are skills. You cannot do collaborative problem solving until you know how to not block and how to listen openly. So when you listen, of course you don't want to block, and you want to, this is the time when you're not judging. Does anyone remember reflective listening? So reflective listening is when you are discussing solutions and you're saying something like, well, I understand that this is what you're thinking. That's not what this is. This is simply an opportunity for you to give space for your child to vent their feelings. Now, please do not listen to them venting at you and calling you names. That's not okay. You can say, I want to hear what you're feeling, what you're thinking. I will not listen to you calling me names or abusing me. That's called a personal boundary. Set your personal boundaries. That seem fair? Right. Okay. So sometimes parents get overwhelmed. Oh, I'm supposed to listen. Then they listen. They shouldn't listen, and they listen to things that are not appropriate to listen to. Okay. I like this image of anger. So think of anger as a secondary. So if your child is angry, you want to kind of listen for what's going on, be underneath the anger. What's causing anger? Are they feeling hurt? Are they feeling frustrated? Are they feeling sad? Are they feeling annoyed? So anger is kind of secondary. All right.
Could you go back to that one just for a second?
Yes. Sorry. Of it. So when someone's angry, it's helpful. That happened, that created the anger. What are the feelings that are really leading to that anger? Can I go on now? Is everyone okay? Okay. So again, I'm going to say that I'm going to keep repeating this because this is new for all of you, I'm sure. This is a time you're going to stop blocking and you're going to listen and just make some phrases, empathetic phrases, to just keep your child talking. That's all it is. You're not trying to evaluate, judge them, question them. You're just pressure cooker, letting them vent. Okay, so here's some examples. I'm sorry to hear that. Now, some people like that, some don't. Starting with I is about you as well. So all of these suggestions doesn't, because you'll know, right, if they don't like it. I'm sorry to hear that. What does it matter whether you're sorry or not? I don't care. Was that a good empathetic phrase? No, you scratch that. Well, don't use that one again. Nope. That one doesn't work. So these are just suggestions you try. Some people are thinkers, some are feelers. Some people do their feelings talked about, and that's okay. I had to realize my daughter's a thinker. She's really a business person, thinker. I'm more of a feeler. So I had to understand why it wasn't easy for her to talk about feelings. I'm sorry to hear that. That seems like a real problem. Look at that sentence. That is, it's kind of out there, right? Seems like. So notice how that's saying I know. I'm not being a know-it-all. Oh, well, it looks to me like, seems like a real problem. Am I talking about the feelings of the person? No. This can be a good thing for a thinker. All you're trying to do, remember, you're trying to give space to vent. You're not analyzing. You don't have to figure it out at this point in time. It's really such a joy. It's like, okay, all I have to do is just kind of respond, so they'll keep talking and letting the vent come out. Okay. I'm listening. I'm just guessing. This is really good for teenagers. I'm just guessing. Something seems to be bothering you. Let's say they say, no, nothing's bothering me. Well, I don't know. You kind of look a little different. I could be wrong. And you do these phrases just to let them know you're here and you're letting them out. So let's say, I can't stand this homework. Okay? I can't stand this homework. This is really stressing you out. Now, is that going to be hard to say? Because I think some of you might want to say, well, you have to do this homework. This was your assignment. If you had done it when you first got home, then you wouldn't have this problem. Right? That's a block. That's commanding. Okay? Is it going to help your child? No. So I want to help you to say things that will be helpful, build connection. Then you have influence. Okay. I'm here. Or all. Here's one I know you can all do. Repeat after me. One dad had a teenage girl. He was teaching her some tennis, and she wouldn't do well. And she'd get in the car and be really upset, and he would start telling her what to do differently. Do you think that worked out well? Oh, so instead, he learned about the blocks, and she got in the car, and he just went, He didn't say anything, because he knew if he was going to say anything, it was going to be a block. So he figured he's safe not saying anything. Went on and on and on and talked about it, invented about how she felt about her tennis playing, and then she was fine. Always in the past, they had a big fight and a big argument. So instead, what do you think she felt about her dad? Think he's a good listener. Dad's a good listener. That's all she needed. She did not need advice. She did not need advice. I've worked very hard at the blocks. I didn't know about the blocks before I learned, and I've worked so hard to not block my daughter. I'm not as good with my husband. But he'll tell you if you pull him aside afterwards that I'm certainly much better. Okay. None of us in my family like to be told what to do. He's quiet about it. I'm the vocal type. I'm a Leo, you know. My daughter's a Scorpio. He's a Gemini, but he doesn't like to be told what to do either. So we don't do a lot of commanding in our household. Okay. All right. Now's an opportunity. What do you say instead? So we're going to work on your handout to empathetic phrases. So here's what you're going to look for. And this is so important to read them aloud. Isn't it powerful when you hear it and you feel it? So for each one of you be the child, and then somebody do the 4 potential responses. Now you're looking for responses that are about the child's thoughts or feelings, not you interrogating, commanding. You will see lots of blocks in here. So you might even say, oh, that's what she was talking about. That's sarcasm. Oh, that's placating. That's what I would do. So go ahead, 2 or 3 people, go through all of them, find the most empathetic phrase. Okay, let's go through them. Isn't this fun? Isn't this learning about yourself and what you're doing insightful, exciting? How many of you are excited? Like, yay! I have some hope. Now I can kind of see what it is I'm thinking, what I should do instead. Again, this is when you're not rushing out of the house. This is when your child's expressing what's going on and you're thinking, here's an opportunity to build connection with my child. Now, you'll be doing this before you follow on to collaborative problem solving, which we don't have time to do tonight. That this is step 1, stop blocking. Step 2, listen openly, collaborative. You discuss ideas, then you come up with a solution, and you can later. The 5 steps of the collaborative problem solving process. But we're not doing that tonight. Okay. So let's look at what do you think number 1? I think I gave you the answers anyways, didn't I? That's okay. So let's just go through number 1. Child, I just can't do this. It's too hard. Stop complaining. It's not too hard for you. Is that empathetic? What kind of block do you think that is? Commanding? Right. Commanding. Stop complaining. Just do a little bit. Take a break and then do more. How many of you wanted to do that one? Wow. Okay. What communication block is that? Giving advice? Right. So it's kind of commanding and giving advice together. You seem frustrated with this work. That's the empathetic one, right? You're not telling them, you're not saying, well, you're just venting, letting them vent, okay? It isn't as bad as it seems. You can do it. Which one's that? Yeah, you got, because I know that you got, okay. Is there anyone you have a question go into the after then and boundaries? Yeah. Oh, hold on, let me get the microphone.
So on number 3.
Number 3.
Child, I can't stand my hair. It never looks good. That's a challenge. Is that sarcasm?
So I love that question because it depends on your tone of voice, right? Right? So if your attitude is, well, that's a challenge, then it is sarcasm, right? So if it's more like, wow, that's really a challenge, then it isn't. Okay, another question over here. Hold on a sec. Oh, we want to give so we can.
I was just going to say that about 3, that it also sounds like you're brushing aside the problem rather than addressing the problem. You know, like that's a challenge. Like I don't want to talk about it. Like you're.
Okay. So thanks for bringing that up. So again, every single empathetic phrase you try, you see what the response is. Okay? So for you, it sounds like if you express something and somebody said that's a challenge, that wouldn't feel like an empathetic phrase for you.
That's correct. It sounds like you're not interested in hearing my problem.
Right. So anyways, if anybody gives her an empathetic phrase, don't try, that's a challenge, that isn't good, right? Oh, which is fine. We're all individuals. So when you go through this, think about what you don't like, right? Can you imagine? Then you can tell your partner or your friend, you know, I've been learning about these communication blocks, and I need to tell you, when you give me advice, the underlying message really says to me that I don't have sense to make up my own decisions, and it really kind of feels hurtful. What I would like if you could just listen and let me vent for a while. World peace, right? That's what we need to learn how to communicate with each other. This was so powerful when I learned this, and I hope this has been really powerful for you, with your families that you're going to change the interactions that you have?
So at what point do you move from the open listening to actually like trying to work on the issue? Because some of these things, like, okay, I get in a particular, in that moment, giving advice might not be helpful, but
Yes.
it might actually be the way that you need
Yes.
to work on something. So at what point do you know to transition?
Do you move
out of
on?
that?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, great question. Right, how long do you do empathy, right? It's like, yeah. So, yeah, how long? So what you might want to do is kind of test the waters. Let's say that let's say they're talking upset about a friendship issue and you're kind of listening to them. And you might kind of test the water. Well, we could talk about some different possible things to do. Would that feel good to you? So you see what I'm saying? So you kind of test it. When can I move into the problem solving step? So, thank you. It's going to vary for each child when to move on. But that's the goal, try to move on if you are doing problem solving. Okay. Something that really is very profound for me is redwoods. Love the redwoods. I think of them as so majestic. So I want you to leave tonight thinking about problems equal struggle. Would you all agree? Yes. Struggles equal growth. Only through struggles do we really get massive growth, and only through that massive growth do we get wisdom. And through the wisdom, then we can have, a life that's really rich. So please don't take away your children's opportunities to have problems and to learn from them and grow from them. So when you learn how to listen to them first, that's the second step to helping them move on to solving their problems. Okay. So we talked about ally versus adversary, kind of help you change your perspective of how to parent. Then we talked about the emotions, how to listen, crucial. You can't do problem solving without listening. Your children will be less likely to want to do anything you request of them if they don't feel listened to. So this is the foundation. And I think I really worked hard at this with my daughter for her to feel listened. I had to change a lot because I'm pretty pushy and bossy. So I had to work on these blocks. And the more I did, so when things were really hard, then she was able to come to me, that she knew she could come to me. It's really, because she was bullied in school. There's a lot of difficult things that she had that caused her to act in ways that might not have been what she would have wanted to do, but because of what she was going through, it was really difficult. So I've been through hard things, and using these skills has been very valuable. So I really, truly hope that this helps with your family. Okay, now we're going to talk about the director role. What's crucial about the director role is that the emotional connection really helps it when you have to set limits and have to correct. So that's why I wanted to make sure that you do emotional connection first. Because tendency for parents to say, well, how do I get my kid to fill in the blank? Or how do I get my kid not to? What would you fill in the blank? How do I get my kid to, what are you trying to get them to do? What's that? Do chores. What else? Not procrastinate. I'm sorry, say again.
Not watch too much TV.
Not watch too much TV. Sorry. Not fight with siblings? Okay. So this is all, how do I control, right? So you're taking it on as though some of the, like the thing, problem. That's not a director role problem. Just so you know that. Procrastination is not a director role problem. It's a collaborator role problem, okay? So now I want to talk about when it is a director role problem. Okay. Discipline and punishment, those terminology gets used incorrectly often. They're saying I'm disciplining my child when you're actually punishing. So I really want you to understand what the difference is, because you can talk about it in a way that really is the correct way it should be. So when you look at the left side, the discipline side, is you can respond to a misbehaving child in two ways. It as a teachable moment. Discipline comes from what? Disciple, to teach, correct? So when you're using discipline strategies, you're seeing this situation as a teachable moment. Or you see it as a time to impose a punitive consequence. That is punishment. Anytime you are trying to make your child feel bad to do better, that is punishment. So the goal of discipline is to create cooperation with children. The goal of punishment is to go after children and to really, like the chasing, right? Control children. So whenever you're saying, get my kid to, or what do I do when my kid does this, that's punishment. Discipline, you're proactive. You come up with approaches ahead of time. Okay, this problem happened. They're not doing their chores. What are we going to do to ensure that chores are being done? They're procrastinating. They're just not getting their work done. Okay, we're going to have a discussion to determine how we can solve this problem so the procrastination doesn't happen as much. Now, punishment has been throughout time. Controlling other people, right? That has been the standard of parenting forever. How do I punish? How do I make my child feel bad so they do better? How do I make my child feel bad so they're going to do better? Does that make sense? Psychologically, it does not make sense. And yet we fall back on it because that's the way it has been throughout time. Controlling. And parents, you might not know what to do instead, and you get fearful, and then you go. Okay. It's easy to fall back on punishing, right? But it doesn't feel good at all. Okay. So, there's you tonight. The first one is on personal boundaries. I'm going to go through this really quickly because we need to end on time. A personal boundary is what you will and won't do. That's what a personal boundary is. It is not trying to control your child. So when I said earlier about I will listen to you, I'm not going to listen to you when you swear at me, when you call me names, I will not listen to you. I'm going to go over here. You can come to me when you're able to talk to me without speaking to me that way. That is a personal boundary. If at any point you feel taken advantage of, used, not appreciated, I am going to propose that you have not set personal boundaries, that you are allowing it to happen. And so if you're allowing it to happen, who can stop it? Yes. Setting personal boundaries are very, very important. Some examples here. I'm not able to drive you to the store. Some examples, I'll cook after the kitchen is cleaned up. I'll give you my answer after you talk to me or speak to me in a kinder way. I'll pay for half of these shoes. You pay the other half. I did this with my daughter all the time. So what do the sentences start with? I. It's not you. If you don't, that's a threat. You have to is a command. It's not an effective one. It's a form of punishment because you're controlling. Boundaries are very, very, very important to do. So I'll go through a few of them. Examples. These are controlling. You should have asked me sooner. This is not a boundary. Clean up the kitchen now or no dinner. These are all, you notice these are shaming, right? See how respectful the boundaries are? And these are putting the child down. Don't talk to me with that language. Hurry up. and come for the for the shower now, or you won't have one with me. You're always asking for things. I'm not made out of money. You can feel how hurtful those are. So when you continually say those, there's an underlying sense of hurt that your children feel about you. But it can be changed. Once you learn new strategies, it can be changed. So now today, so far you've learned about blocking communication, right? How to respond with empathy. You've learned about the sun. You've learned about setting boundaries. And your kids are going to respond well to boundaries. They really do. Now, because I want to get to the after then, I'm not going to, I really want to encourage you when you go home the next day or two to write down a boundary that you will use. Boundaries are very, very important to do. Okay. So I want to talk about the work before play, which is the after then. My favorite. Now, no strategies do you use at every time, right? It has to be, the certain situation has to be right. So when you start using the after then, which is the work before play, it's helpful to have a discussion with everybody in the family. Because wouldn't you say most of the world functions that after people do work, they somehow celebrate in some way? Or they treat themselves? Oh, so hard all week, let's go to town. That's work before. It is not giving a reward at all. It's not paying money, you do this, I'll pay you money. It's some sort of pleasure that person gets after they do the work. So you can sit down with your kids and write down what are the things that have to be done and what kind of play would you like to do in response to them. So you say to your kids, you know what, I've been begging you to do all these things and that doesn't feel good to you, does it? So instead, there are certain things we're going to do before play with. Okay. The after then. All right. This is how I would get my daughter to do her chores. Now, I knew she had to do some chores, and I didn't want to nag. So as soon as she asked to do something, and this is actually stories in my book, and she verified it's true. Can I go over to Beth's house? And I would think, what hasn't she done yet? Right? Oh, she hasn't cleaned the bathroom. So I would use an after then. You must use it very, very specifically. Don't switch the order. Don't change the words. Don't add an if. Don't add a but. Okay. Al, after you clean the bathroom, then you can go. But Mom, everybody's going there now. Do I go into that with her? No. After the bathroom. Mom, why didn't you tell me sooner? Why do you always want to wait until I have to go? Do I engage with that? No. Bathroom first. Oh, all right. Worked every time. Worked every time. Now, you can also add an empathy statement into it. I could have said, and I'll be with you in a second, I could have said, wow, you really want to go to your friend's house. Now, again, you have to decide what empathy works, right? Okay? Or, oh, okay, yeah, I get it, you want to go. You have to be careful, so that could be sarcasm, all right? But you can add empathy. I had one mom, she was working on this, and they made this rule that in the morning that they had to have their cell phones put away until they got ready in the morning, right? So she used an after then, and they all talked about it, what they didn't like about the morning, how they all complained about was yelling, and they wanted to stop the yelling, and so came up with that they must have things done before the phone. So got up, and they're going to test it. Just know that. Don't get mad at them. He had the phone. Just know, okay, I'm going to expect the testing. So she said, oh, remember, the rule is after you finish getting ready, then you can have the phone. Oh, all right. This is the teenager. Because discussion about it, and they all understood, then went along with it. Yes, do you have a question?
Yeah, you were talking about the bathroom cleaning. So sometimes they might have a point. If you just always repeat your phrase, to me, that would feel I'm not being heard. It's like, I'm telling you something, but you're not listening. You're just blocking and saying, bathroom, bathroom.
Right. And that's what you're going to do during this time as a director. I had one dad who had 2 really strong-willed boys. And he was coming to me because they were nailing him all the time. He had to do 5 times, keep repeating it. And short, you notice each handout, I give you a script. Each gets shorter and shorter. You don't say, but listen about it, and we agreed, and how come you're giving me a hard time? You don't do any of that. You just shorter. And he had to do it 5 times, and you know what he said? At the end, they're like, oh, all right. Because he didn't engage with the arguing, and he didn't get into listening, he just was able to do it. So I'm going to give you 1 minute to go through and fill out, do an after then on your handout. After you think what you want them to do, then you can. Anyone willing to share their after then? Okay, microphone over here. Did you get all the steps filled in?
Oh, no, I just have one sentence.
Oh, you got to do all of them, okay? Hold on. Okay. So what's the first one? Oh, sorry, we'll bring back, sorry.
Okay. The first one is after you clean up your room, then you can have your friend come over for a sleepover.
Okay, so that's the first one. See that, how complete it is? And look how it gets short. Child complains.
After cleaning your room, then sleepover. Then friend for a sleepover. What?
Yeah, then sleepover. Just keep reducing it, okay? Complain.
Cleaning room first.
Yeah. It is amazing how it works. It is so, and you have to do it when there's something they want to do, right? So the timing is what's important. And let them know ahead of time you're going to be doing work before play, and do a whole discussion about that so they're used to it. They know that this is what's going to happen, and it's amazing. You might have to do another statement. Do not answer why. Don't answer why. Don't answer if. If you don't, that's a threat. Don't put their play before the work, because they don't hear the work part, right? You can you garble. They don't hear that. This order is important. Okay. I challenge you to try one when you get home. So the next thing is activity 7. Write down right now, what is your focus going to be when you leave here tonight? What are you going to really focus on? The blocks? Are you going to focus on after then? You're going to focus on empathy. I see a lot of prefrontal cortexes working out there. I see a lot of light bulbs going there. The limbic system too, huh? It's very emotional. So just a couple points I wanted to bring out is when you change, your children change. That's where the power is. To really know that emotions need to be heard before do thinking. Your child's emotional, don't try to discuss things. You need to listen to them. You can even say, you know what, I want to listen, I've got 5 minutes. You can set, if you need to, I'm listening for 5 minutes. And make sure that you set your own personal boundaries and you're after them without any kind of judgment at all. So thank you for coming. It's been wonderful being with you tonight. Yeah.